We'll go ahead and get started. So I wanted to say thank you to Viatris for their support of this MS mental wellness chat. They have been supporting us for a good while for this program. And then I always like to say thank you to MS Views and News because they are the ones that really were the driver of this program starting, a couple years ago. We're almost going on 4 years, which is crazy to think about. And it's been such a great community and a great resource for people. So vulnerability is the only bridge to build connection. And that's one thing that is really great about this group is that we come up, I think we all attend at a pretty vulnerable, honest level, and that allows us to connect with one another. And this is another one that I am going to always share, but this one is really relevant for tonight's program because we're talking about emotional first aid. And I always like to share that you are not alone. I think often with disease, you can feel isolated or feel that you are by yourself. But also with mental illness, with depression or anxiety, mood changes, other things in life, sometimes people often tend to feel like they are alone when in actuality, you're not. And so I think that's an important theme for tonight's program. And as we talk about the resources that I'll share, is to know that that you are not alone, but it's also good for that messaging for other people to hear that they're not alone either. And so I hope if I say it enough, other people say it too, and it sort of sticks because the truth is that we need to feel more connected. And one of the best things we can do in helping people is to help let them know that they're not alone. So we'll move on to our next slide. So mental health first aid, why should we talk about this, or emotional health first aid? It's because if we are aware within ourselves and generally, what are signs of mental health or emotional health needs? One, if we're aware of it for ourselves, we can apply first aid to ourselves in the sense of the resources that we need to feel a little bit better, to get the resources we need. But then we also can do this for other people. So there might be people in your community, there might be people in your support group, there might be people that you work with, might be someone in your family for all we know. And it's important to kind of know some of the general standards of emotional health first aid and mental health first aid. So in some cases, this can be something serious where you're helping someone in a crisis situation, someone that may be experiencing, suicidal thoughts or panic attacks or severe anxiety. I know in the survey we had a couple people mention last month they wanted help on how to de-escalate a panic attack. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today as well. But sometimes there's non-crisis situations, someone that might be showing just anxiety. If we can go back one slide, someone that's showing early signs of anxiety, depression, or substance abuse. So there's some key components to mental health first aid. One is just kind of recognizing the signs and symptoms. Some of you may have experienced some of these symptoms before, but knowing kind of some of the base, and we talk about this in the mental wellness chat a lot, the basic signs and symptoms of depression, anxiety, panic, suicidal thoughts, etc. And when we can have a little bit more early recognition of it within ourselves, it can really prevent from mental health from worsening, for quicker intervention and support. So outcomes are usually better for ourselves and for other people if we can identify that there are some mental health needs going on. But we can't do that without talking about it, because mental health often, not always, but often there's a lot of invisible aspects to it. And so talking about it is one of the most important things. So providing initial support, knowing how to provide support to people in a non-judgmental way, and also when we're talking about from the view of yourself too, not being judgmental about how you're feeling. And really research says that, for people who who make sure that they are educated and feel comfortable talking about mental health, and connecting people to professionals and to further treatment have better outcomes. So this is something that's important for you, for yourself, but it's also important for you as a part of a bigger community of people. I've mentioned in the past that MS has a high, as well as other chronic diseases, has a high level of depression and anxiety. And depression can be very comorbid with the disease. And so these are, important things. And the more that we can talk about it, and we've had many people on the mental wellness chat, which I'm super proud about, that have done, really well in terms of getting resources to find a counselor since they've been attending this program. And so essentially, if you're providing, reassurance, if you're providing, some support, some resources, some connection, helping people not feel isolated, there's a better chance that they might get some resources and help. And if you're approaching yourself in a compassionate, non-judgmental way, there is a higher level that you'll feel more open to those resources as well. And there are a lot of trainings and classes that you can take on mental health first aid and emotional health first aid. But we're going to focus today. We're going to talk a little bit about anxiety. We're going to talk a little and panic, and then we're going to talk a little bit about depression, things that you can do if you see somebody or if you're experiencing it yourself. And then we're going to talk about like kind of toolkit stuff, things that you can do that you should sort of always have in your emotional health, emotional wellness toolbox that you can pull out and use at any time that you need it. But we're going to move on to we'll leave it right here. But Jane has a question. She said, "How can I respond whenever I tell people I have MS, whether or not they know me well or not? They really always tell me someone they know who has it so bad, and then they detail it. I try to quickly tell them, no, don't tell me. I don't want to know. They will follow on how good I look. We know the problems with that. What can I say or do?" So to kind of summarize this, so this happens to me too, where you might disclose to someone I have MS, and then someone will say, "Oh, my uncle had MS, and he died about 15 years ago," and then they go on to talking about another person that they know and the situation. And I know how I respond, but I would like to know, how would you respond, or how do you respond when somebody kind of says, "Oh, I know," and they continue to tell you like worst case scenario of or that person's experience. My response, Jane, has always been that those comments, sometimes they come out of love and care. Sometimes they come out of connecting and trying to feel like they understand. But usually my response is, my MS is my MS. And my MS is as individual as a person is. So, so you sharing this person's experience really won't kind of reflect on my own experience. We may have some connections, but generally each of our experiences are different. So Rick says everyone is different, so that's how he would respond. It's kind of hard because it can be uncomfortable in those moments, but this is your experience, and when you decide to share with someone, you can also own how you respond when they start, that connecting. And if we don't have anyone that has any suggestions, just tell me, does this happen to you? It does happen to me, and it has happened to me all the time over the past 19 years. Joe says, advocate for myself, say sorry about that. Everyone has it different. So that's kind of nice too. That's acknowledging, kind of standing up for yourself, but then saying, I'm sorry to hear that story, but everybody is different. Everybody, so that's a nice way as well. Do you have any tips for Jane, or can identify with that? Just let me know in the chat, continue to type, and we'll move forward too. So severe anxiety and panic attacks. How do we help somebody, or how do we help ourselves if we're experiencing this? First, it's important to acknowledge, yourself, if you're experiencing a panic attack, that is something that is not life-threatening. Panic attacks can feel very, very scary. I've had one before in my life, and so recognizing that this is something is that has happened before, or this is something that is, a feeling and an experience, that it is not life-threatening, because often it feels like it's life-threatening in that moment when you're experiencing it. The next thing to do, so if you see somebody experiencing a panic attack and you can identify it's a panic attack, I think it's good to say, I'm here, right here with you. You are safe. And let's focus on some breathing, because that would be the next thing that if you were going through it yourself, I would want you to do, is to focus on breathing. And if you're helping somebody, to help them focus on breathing. That's actually one of the things that you can do that would be really beneficial for a panic attack or anxiety. So with that, I encourage, and in these roles, you're not acting as a therapist, you're not acting as a medical professional, you're just acting as somebody who's caring about somebody. And gosh, we need more of those people in this world sometimes. So, and the world should welcome that. But what you could do for the breathing is say, I want to breathe with you. So let's breathe together, because when you're focusing on your breath, you can often help when it helps with a panic attack, because you can calm the nervous system down a little bit, but you can also regulate the breathing, which will kind of regulate the heart rate too. And so you would breathe in. I really recommend to breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth for this type of breathing. And so you can say, we'll breathe in for a count of 2, and let's breathe out for a count of 2. And then you can say, we'll breathe in for a count of 2, and then we'll breathe out for a count of 4. You can get that exhale happening a little bit longer. That's going to help calm the vagus nerve a little bit, and that is going to help calm their body. And if you can do this a couple of times, you can probably get a sense of, for yourself, to calm a little bit. And then also, if you're helping someone, help them. Another thing that you can do is a grounding activity. So if you're in a state of panic and you need emotional first aid, I want you to do the breathing first. Tell yourself that this is a panic attack, this is a high anxiety, and that you're okay and you're safe. But then do a grounding activity. So bring your attention away from the panic, because when panic is there and anxiety is there, that is all you see in that moment, because it's pretty scary feeling. So a grounding activity would bring you away from the panic and focusing actually on what's around you. So you could, for yourself, list 5 things that you see, or you could ask the person that you're helping, what are 5 things that you can see? What are 4 things that you can touch? The person might be able to touch their hair, they might be able to touch their face, there might be a pen close by, there's 4 things they can touch. And then you ask, what are 3 things they can hear? When you quiet yourself for a second, in your mind for a second, you can actually hear a lot going on. I hear like the ceiling fan right now in the back. 2 things you can smell. And then one thing that they can taste. So by doing this grounding activity, this can help kind of to bring them outside for the panic in. And this can kind of help you and your mind, or you and your friend's mind, to kind of help calm the thoughts in general. Also using positive affirmations, reassuring phrases like, this will pass, I am safe right now, I can handle this. Personally, when I was in a state in my life many, many years ago, that my anxiety was really bad when I was first diagnosed, I remember telling myself, this is a wave, because to me, anxiety felt like waves. And I knew that like the wave would come, but the wave would go too. Engaging in muscle relaxation. So for this activity, and this is something that I used to as a person that had some severe anxiety and panic when I was first diagnosed, this was something I actually did with a therapist for a while, but I did it a lot as a therapist with patients too, and I highly recommend this. There's something called progressive muscle relaxation. And that was a very, very helpful tool to use. One of the things that I learned that I could do is that if you tensed up a muscle and then you relaxed it, your body would get a sense of relaxation. And so I learned when I was the patient, not when I was the professional, I learned when I was the patient that if I was really, really, really nervous, I could tighten my fists up or even like my calf muscle and then release it. And by just learning to do that, those subtle tensing, relaxing moments really could kind of signal to my body like a sense of relaxation. And that really did help. It was very therapeutic. And it's been very therapeutic for people I've worked with. I might as well tell you that if I've tried it, I tried it and it's worked. Also, to reach out to someone that you trust, so when you're feeling a sense of panic or anxiety, it's important to have someone that you can trust, that you can talk to. And maybe you have that person in your cell phone. Maybe there's someone who can distract you a little bit or can help calm you a little bit, or that you can just talk to about it. Someone that you don't feel like will judge you. Um, and then give yourself time, because after a panic attack, you might feel exhausted and drained. I know when I haven't had many panic attacks, but when I did back then, I know that I just felt completely tired and emotionally spent, and then I felt a little bit frustrated, and a little bit sad. So there's a lot of feelings that kind of go back to that. So if you're feeling like you're exhausted, just do things that feel comforting until you feel kind of more grounded again. It's not the time to push yourself. It's not the time to say I can do hard things and keep trying. No, let's kind of get to a place where we feel a little bit better, and that is something that can help. So I'm going to break while I'm looking at the screen real quick. So Dion says, Jane, this is a response to your question. I tell them that each person with MS is unique and has a unique journey. And that's important, because I think it helps you to separate yourself from everyone. But the truth is your journey is your journey. And hopefully you're teaching them too that, really everyone's MS is a little bit different. So if they say, but you look so good, everybody's MS is a little bit different. And then Linda is here, and she said, I thought it was next week. Sorry, I'm late. Linda, you know what? I thought it was next week too. And then someone told me it was this week, and because they had got an email, and I was like, oh, I guess it's this week. I actually had it on my calendar for next week, so I apologize too. I'm here, and you're here. Thank you. But I just want to be honest and transparent. I actually thought it was next week too. So that's kind of a little bit to deal with anxiety and panic attacks. It's important to acknowledge what's happening. And I think it's important to be just non-judgmental, calm, and overall just really considerate. So we're going to move on to our next slide, and we're going to talk a little bit about depression. Well, oh, sorry, it's the same slide, but different words. I apologize. Bless me. So, depression can be, incredibly tough. Again, this is, I'm speaking from two different sides here. I'm speaking from like if you were experiencing yourself, or if you're, working with someone or helping someone, or you care about someone, or you've noticed someone is showing more symptoms of depression. The first thing we want to do is we want to just acknowledge that if we talk about these things, it's helpful. I think one of the most dangerous things we can do is not talk about things. And that's really important. So let me move on. We have a couple people that let's see. So we had Joe, and this is a really good suggestion. He said, my backup is to just set them um, up with knowing that 988 is a suicide hotline. And that's really important too. As you know, and I think that people do a pretty good job on social media sharing and kind of talking about what resources are there. And these are, these are tough topics, but these are really, these are real things that people experience. And maybe people here have experienced. I won't call anyone out or ask anyone to call themselves out, but, but it's important to share these resources because you never know when someone's going to need them. And I will be very honest and very transparent that I used to work in a behavioral health hospital that served geriatric patients mostly. And in that time, what I learned is that in a really real way that you have no idea what someone's thinking, and so if you ask, it's okay to ask people and to say, I've noticed you've seemed kind of sad. How have you been feeling? Have you been thinking about hurting yourself? It's okay to ask. It's okay to talk about things because otherwise nobody will know what somebody is thinking. Again, I'm not asking you to be a professional. I'm not asking you to be a therapist. I'm just saying in the situations in the community and even within yourself. So one is to acknowledge your feelings when you are experiencing significant depression symptoms. I think one of the hardest things that can happen is just not being in a place where we can accept where we're at. And it's really hard to do this, but when you can accept that you're struggling, it gives you the permission to feel what you're feeling. There's no rush or reason to snap out of it, and honestly, there's no snapping out of it. It can't be done like that. Taking one step at a time when everything kind of feels overwhelming, just focusing on short, manageable tasks. Even simple tasks like getting out of bed, eating, going for walks, things that maybe some days feel like you can do them very easily. If you're feeling depressed or having some depressive symptoms, those things can feel like victories. So celebrate those really small things that you're doing to take care of yourself. They all add up. I always say too, if you're feeling very overwhelmed, often people they run with like to-do lists. I do for work, I know, but I know that on days where I don't have as much energy, either emotional energy or physical energy, what I do is instead of looking at my to-do list, I create a I did list. And I acknowledge things on my list that I normally wouldn't acknowledge. And that it gives you a place to kind of celebrate a small step. And I model this for people because I think it's a really helpful task, a helpful thing you can do. Another thing to do if you're experiencing another emotional first aid thing you can do is to reach out for connection. It might feel incredibly difficult, but talking to someone you can trust can help you feel a little bit better. I recently heard something somewhere, and it was, and I felt like it was pretty significant, like 8 minutes. It usually takes about 8 minutes for someone to feel a little bit better after talking to someone. So just thinking about like maybe I could just talk to this person for less than 10 minutes and maybe I'll feel a little bit better. Or if you're the friend, hey, let's just talk for just a little bit. And you might even notice around the 8 to 10 minute mark that they're feeling a little bit better. Maybe symptoms aren't incredibly improved because it is depression, but people will generally feel a little bit better. And then engage in activities that usually bring comfort. So depression can, drain your energy away. So and it might even take away some of your interest in things, creating like a little bit of apathy. So even if it's hard to do, it's important to do things that have helped you feel better in the past. And that might be, it might be exercising, it might be listening to music, it might be reading, it might be spending time outside, it might be having a cup of coffee or tea with a friend, it might be what make the things that make you feel good. I'm going to read. Dion came on. She said, extending grace to yourself. It's okay to not feel okay. Extend yourself some grace. And that's we have to give ourselves permission that it's okay to not feel okay, and we have to do that for MS sometimes, and mental health as well. And then just acknowledging and accepting how you feel, and then giving yourself permission to rest. It's okay to rest when you're feeling low. Taking some time to pause is okay. Reflect or even sit quietly can help you as you're kind of weeding through your thoughts. Depression can be very draining, and it definitely is something that most people are not don't get much energy from. So don't feel guilty for needing more time to recover, but then also knowing that that it's important to do small things, even just to keep a little bit of movement, to keep a little bit of routine, etc. And then seeking professional help when you're ready. Sometimes getting professional help is a really big step to take. It could be therapy, it could be counseling, it could be just really even talking to your doctor about it. And it doesn't mean that you're weak, or to me, that's what brave looks like. And it's a hard thing to get to that point sometimes, but that, is what brave can, look like. And then giving yourself self-compassion, as you go through this process. So I wanted to open up I don't have a chat box question, so we'll just leave it on this slide, but I just wanted to see, like, are any of these resources things that you've used in the past? If you've had a time of feeling really low, or if you've had a time of feeling very anxious, or what have you done in the past if you've had a time of anxiety or panic, or a period of depression that you've used that was kind of like your game changer? And I will share one. Let's see. So I acknowledge that there was a time in my early on in my MS diagnosis where I had a lot of anxiety and actually some panic from it. And so one of the things that I did is I gave myself grace, because I had a lot of trouble driving on the highway back then. A lot of trouble. That's actually where my panic kind of like bled into driving on the highway. And so I gave myself permission and grace that if I needed to pull over and do like a progressive relaxation exercise, that I would allow myself to do that. And so, and that's kind of has moved forward to today, where I don't judge myself if I need to breathe or if I need to do an exercise, that I just know I need the tool to help with whatever I'm feeling in that moment. So that is something that was really helpful. So what was your game changer of depression symptoms, or any panic, anxiety? And I can also share a game changer for many of my patients that I worked with during COVID. We took away like really rigid scheduling. And we instituted kind of like a soft schedule, and that soft schedule had things like, and these were for mostly my people that were dealing with depression, but some with anxiety. But the soft schedule would be like, do do one thing to take care of myself, do one thing to take care of something outside, or nature, do one thing to move, like I'm trying to remember, it was a little form that I would use, and that really was a game changer for many people, because it didn't feel really rigid, and it was almost like a little checkbox, and there's only 4 or 5 things on it, and so it didn't feel super overwhelming, and so it helped them. So we have Joe here that says writing it out and then burning it. He said medications and then talking about it. Yeah, all those things can help, like getting, kind of your feelings about it. You don't have to burn it. If you can burn it, you don't have to. You can also tear it in a billion pieces if you want. You can crunch it up in your hand. That some people with anxiety did that, and that was helpful. But really talking about it and normalizing it, giving it space. Okay, we're going to move on to our next slide. Okay, so we're going to talk about some tools here. This is Charlie. He's not in here with me because I kind of joke he's becoming Charles Barkley because he's barking a little bit. So he's not in my programs all the time anymore. But he is in here sometimes, but just not tonight. So Dion says, I acknowledge how I'm feeling. I remind myself that that is how I'm feeling and it's okay. I think when I've tried to deny how I'm feeling, it probably was more harmful. Absolutely. When you try to push your feelings away, they kind of come back in a more vicious way. And if we can just accept how we feel and just knowing our feelings are just that, they're feelings, they're thoughts, they're temporary, they're not actions. Giving them space, even if it's uncomfortable, letting them have like a place, a seat at the table. So one of the so now we've moved on. We talked a little bit about anxiety, a little bit about panic. We're going to talk about now just generally some good tools for ourselves. So the first one is self-compassion. So chronic illness, MS, can sometimes lead to some feelings of self-blame, frustration, feelings of inadequacy or guilt, and so practicing self-compassion um, involves kind of recognizing that it's okay and it's important to be kind to yourself. And if when you're kind to yourself, you reduce judgment. When you reduce judgment, you feel better because when we don't feel judged, we feel better. We feel more accepted, and that can reduce stress and emotional pain. So practicing self-compassion just generally is really important for you. And research really shows that if we practice self-compassion, this can reduce feelings of anxiety and depression with chronic disease, and leading to better emotional regulation. So if we're honest about how we feel, if we can talk about it, then this helps a little bit. Krista said, sorry, Charlie. I know, right? And then we have Barbara, and she says, my depression will pop in, and I try to give myself some time to take a break, weep if I need to, and then just do something that makes me feel better, whether call someone to talk or read something inspiring or meditate for a while. Absolutely. And as life happens. We talked about grief last month, but life just kind of has all these like ebbs and flows, and it's challenging, it's tough, it's hard, and so kind of finding ways to sort of navigate, your mood, your emotions, how you're feeling. So we'll move on to our next slide. So self-compassion. So the next one is seeking social support. So seeking social support is super important because isolation is a very, very common emotional challenge, especially with chronic disease. I think with MS, we've done better, with our groups. And of course, this group has been, so great and helpful for people. But seeking social support is helpful. This doesn't mean you can still be introverted, but having some level of support is important. And building some level of support system, either with friends, family, support groups that can provide comfort, perspective, and kind of really practical tips. And really the fact is that social support has been linked to lower levels of depression, improved coping skills, and even better physical health outcomes than for those with chronic disease. Now with MS, it doesn't matter if you have a lot of friends or a big social group. Your disease is your disease, but your quality of life is a lot better when you do have social support. So this is Charlie and my cat Bruce, and I'm not sure who's supporting who here, but they are good friends. We'll move on to our next slide. And then mindfulness. When we learn to practice mindfulness, this can help us to focus on the present moment, reducing feelings of overwhelm, related to the future, related to stressors, to unpredictability, things that may happen. And mindfulness-based stress reduction can really improve our psychological well-being and reduce pain perception also. So if you're someone who's living with neuropathic pain, practicing mindfulness can help. Now, there's a lot of different ways that you can practice mindfulness. My easiest way is sit on the porch and close my eyes and don't go to sleep. Just breathe in and pay attention to what I'm hearing, and I'm listening and just paying attention. Or like I took a picture of looking at a sunset. and just allowing myself to be present in the moment, and not really forward thinking. I'm a big planner, so I live with the planner in front of me and my to-do list, but in those moments, not allowing that to intervene. But practicing mindfulness can be a really positive tool. We'll move on. And then there's cognitive reframing. This is a really helpful tool because, again, I said life is kind of hard, and cognitive reframing gives us the opportunity to shift our negative thoughts. Whereas, for example, something like I can't do this because of my MS, into a more positive, realistic one. I can still accomplish things, but maybe differently. So it gives us power. And cognitive reframing allows us to see things a little bit in a different light. That can be helpful. So I've got a question here that I want to read. Let me go to it real quick. Hold on. So we have Kimberly that says, what to do when you don't have friends and don't have things to do? Loneliness is really tough, and this is something that many people, are challenged with. So I'm going to ask you as a group. I can respond a little bit, but I want to ask you as a group. What do you do when you don't have friends and don't have things to do? One of and I'll kind of get us started, but I want you guys to chime in as a group. What have you done? And when you had a period of time where you maybe didn't have friends or didn't feel like you had a lot of friends or you needed different friends, what did you do? So one thing I have learned that, and I heard this a long time ago, but I think it's true. You can't be interesting without being interested. So that kind of reframed a little bit about like things that I've done for myself. So, like learning how to do art or learning how to do things. And that has helped me a little bit in terms of having things to do, finding things that I could learn or be interested in. And that's, that hasn't helped the friend situation, but that does help when you feel like you don't have anything to do, is that you create some things. Another thing you can do is think about the things that gave you energy, that you really benefited from when you were younger, that you enjoyed. And sometimes that can give you a little bit of a hint of things that you would like to do. We have Linda says, I belong to many online MS groups. And I do think that the online groups and support groups can be very beneficial, because sometimes those connections, and some of my I have a small group of friends, and I've mentioned this in the past. I'm not a big group person. I'm a small group of people, but but definitely some of my friends are people that I've met through MS and through my experience of having MS, because they're the people that probably understand my life a little bit more than other people would. Again, all my friendships don't center around MS, but those friendships are very special. And so many online groups, and being a part of a group might be helpful. Also, Rick says, I get lost in a project. I love that. So you find something that you enjoy and you get lost in it. And that, gives you something to do, something to look forward to. And that can be very helpful. So we're going to move on to our next slide. You can keep chiming in. And so Kimberly, thank you so much for sharing that, because I want you guys to support one another with real world things that you've done. So another tool is emotional release. So finding not necessarily place, but ways that you can let go of, built up emotions and stress and frustrations, or even be able to calm your mind. This is a picture. It's about a mile away from my house. I go here every once in a while, and it's usually the place that I go when I just need to kind of quiet my mind or think or let go of something. Sometimes I sit in my car, and sometimes I do what I did like this weekend. I just went and sat on the dock. You don't have to go straight to a lake to do this. Where do you go to kind of just let go of how you're feeling? I'm asking you as a mental wellness chat, like where do you go? Like what do you do when you just need to let go of some emotions? I know we have like people that dance, we have people that do art. We have some music players in here. Or we did at one point, anyways. Um, Linda says she sings. So finding, those places that you could safely release like your emotions, your feelings, little bit at a time. And Jane says, I go to the library. Staff will often talk. Oh, okay. So this is for Kimberly. I go to the library. Staff will often talk to you. List of programs is available, and many nice, talkative people are there. And there are so many programs. I even think Parks and Rec often has really cool programs. I know this isn't a question, but I don't know where else to type. So if you have something else that you're saying, please feel free. But no, that's actually really, really great, Jane, and that matches a little bit what Kimberly needs, is some resources. So I actually think that's a wonderful idea. John says, Mimi, I get lost in the piano, a healthy escape where I lose track of time and place. See, there you go. So there's a great example of music and learning how to do something. And that feeling of getting lost can kind of help, and then it can help you to kind of release like emotions and also writing letters. There's all sorts of things you can do. And I highly recommend you as you're going through, like maybe from this month to next month, if you find yourself doing something and you realize that connects to something that just gave me a really good sense of calm or peace, and or cleared my mind, or opened my heart up. If you can, take a picture of it or a picture of something about it, because it's good to remember. Terry says, my main coping mechanism is realizing other people have problems and why can I help them, i.e. just listening. It's one way of making like-minded friends. Absolutely. When we can listen and talk and connect with people, that is a really great way to connect. And then Dion says mindful coloring. That is very fun. I love that as well. So we're going to move on to our next slide. You can continue to put in into the chat box. So the next one is setting boundaries. I love this picture here, and I'm just sharing it for fun and to be kind of silly, but this is my cat Miles, and he is always setting boundaries with Charlie. And I love it because otherwise Charlie would totally encroach on all of his space. So learning how to set boundaries as a basic tool to help us to keep from getting to a place of severe anxiety or depression symptoms, or high levels of stress, etc. So when you set boundaries, you are taking care of yourself, and you're actually helping other people too, because when you're helping other people know what's okay and what's not okay for you. And so often, when you're living with a disease like MS, like it requires kind of thinking about, your energy, your time management, and setting boundaries helps to prevent burnout and protects emotional well-being by aligning your commitments with the realistic capabilities, and also aligning your commitments with what you want to do. I would say a plus minus with MS is that you have limited energy. So we all know the minus of it, right? It kind of stinks to have limited energy sometimes. But the plus of that is I think it also helps you to kind of pay attention to what matters most and what you want to do. And so you can learn to eliminate some of the unnecessary stuff, because if you put your energy where the things are important. Now, we have to work depending on your situation, you may or may not be working, so it's different, but I'm just talking about like extracurricular stuff you're doing, any extra time, etc. And so it's true to know that people with chronic illnesses who learn to set clear boundaries, they report lower levels of stress and a better quality of life. And they avoid overextending themselves, either physically or emotionally, and even sometimes financially. So we'll move on to the next. And then you see here in this image, there's a lot of tools here. And these are all, I've shared tools with you. I shared them along the way, but sometimes the tool that we need is all the things that you're doing and professional help. So for many dealing with, with a chronic disease like MS, emotional pain can really be hard to manage alone. And seeking the help of a therapist, counselor, social worker, psychologist who specializes in chronic disease may be really helpful to find tailored strategies and support. And we don't always have to use therapy as a reactive. I use therapy as I used it when I was first diagnosed as a reactive thing. I had so much anxiety and panic, I needed therapy. But therapy also can be good on a proactive, just level to have someone to talk with and to bounce things off of and to even sharpen kind of some of your emotional and wellness and resilience tools. And you guys are all on this call, so you're proactive just by being on here every month. Psychotherapy, especially when it focuses on chronic illness management, has been proven to show some more emotional resilience and decrease symptoms of depression and anxiety and enhancing coping strategies. That's really the purpose of this group, is to give you the tools and resources and also connect you with other people. We'll move on to our next slide. So probably the last tool, and this doesn't have a fancy slide with Charlie or any of my cats, but it's be kind to yourself. Life can be tricky and it can be hard. Living with MS is not a easy peasy thing to do sometimes, but then also just life is not easy peasy as well sometimes. And so just a reminder to be kind to yourself and be kind to others, and help encourage others to be kind to themselves too, because we all tend to be a little bit hard on ourselves. And when we can learn to be kind, what I would like, when we learn to be kind to ourselves, what we can do is that we end up a lot better. So Jane has, Jane, if you can message me your email, I'll send that to you. If you could send me your email right now before we end, and I don't want to put you in a panic on that. So if you're able to. We have Margie, who says, join an online Bible study group. Community Bible study and Bible study fellowship on Zoom have helped a lot. They also pray for you and your needs. It really helps. So Margie, that's, we sometimes we don't have the representation of that, that religious connection too. And so, finding those connections with other people and other groups that you feel connected to. So Jane, if you can send me your email, and if you cannot, I will look it up. I'm going to write your first and last name down, and I apologize. I'm going to do that real quick. So one thing I want you to do in the chat box is I want you to tell me something what is one of your takeaways from tonight? Tell me what's one thing that you're going to take away. I'll get us started. So Krista says, a reminder that this tool is that this too is a community. Absolutely. This group is very much a community, and it's an incredible one. It's one of my favorite things, almost going on 4 years. And Linda says, and we are not alone. We are in this together. And that is so true. And I hope that you always feel that, and that you, feel it and also share that with other people to know that they are not. Barbara says to remember that I'm not alone. Julie said being kind to myself. Stephanie said the I did list. Dion said staying connected with others with similar interests is helpful. So very good. So there's a lot of good things. Cindy said to never give up hope. Very good. We're going to move on to our next slide, and you can keep on typing. John said be interested in others as a means of building connection and friendships. Krista said this also helps to assist in reframing, in which I have difficulty. I'm so glad to hear that. Joe says triple check event times, LOL. I know, right? Like, I guess Viatris for their sponsorship, and for MS News and News for this program and this great community that we have. And Jane says she appreciated the ideas on how to talk in a kind way to others and still tell them that MS is different for everyone. She said, thank you. So thank you everyone for contributing. I want to thank you all for your participation, for your sharing, for your communication. Thank you for helping give resources to one another. And more than anything, we'll go to our next slide. I never say goodbye. I always say see you later. So I will see you later, see you in October, and I wish you a beautiful month. Take care.